All right. Yes, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those watching from Germany and Europe. I'm very much looking forward to today's listening session that we are organizing here at RGIT today. And I'm looking forward to hearing the perspectives of our speakers on 1 year into the Biden administration. Our speakers represent a very diverse portfolio of German companies across the United States in law, automotive supplies, food and energy efficiency. I would like to thank our speakers for being on board today to share their perspectives. I would like to thank the German American Chambers of Commerce in Chicago, Atlanta, and in Washington for their coordination and support. And of course, to our audience for tuning in. I'm very glad to see we have such a diverse audience from both sides of the Atlantic, from German companies, German, European, and international industry associations, US government, the German embassy here in DC, and many more. My name is Christoph Schimjonik. I'm the President and CEO of the Representative of German Industry and Trade, or short RGIT, here in Washington. RGIT is the liaison office of Germany's two largest business associations, the Federation of German Industries, BDI, and the Association of German Chambers of Commerce and Industry, DIHK. And both of them together represent the interests of and support over 3 million German companies across the world. As our speakers can attest, the United States represents a highly important market for German companies operating abroad. We have business-friendly conditions here, strong rule of law, a competitive and a well-trained workforce, a vibrant and dynamic economy. These are just some factors that make the US a great place to do business. And to give you a better sense of the wide footprint and deep commitment of German business in the United States, there are over 5,600 German-owned affiliates. 4 of them are here actually today, so I'm very happy about this. And these 5,600 German-owned affiliates, they are in all 50 states, and they create almost 1 million jobs. And these German-owned affiliates over the last years or over the last decades have invested over 550 billion US dollars. And just in 2020, last year, Germany became the US largest source of new foreign direct investment. And all these numbers I just presented in a very brief manner, you can find out more about these numbers and about German business in the United States on RGIT's website, www.germanbusinessusa.com. And to get a better overview, a state-by-state overview that traces the economic footprint of German companies across the country, the numbers of jobs created in each state, and what is traded between each state and Germany. And with that, I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Kevin Wolf. He's a senior analyst for commercial and energy policy. He will explain a few housekeeping rules and manage the rest of the presentation. And he was the one who put this whole webinar together. So thank you, Kevin. And thank you again for being with us. To our audience, Kevin, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Christoph. So before I pass the floor on to our speakers, I'd just like to remind everyone that the event is on the record and will be recorded. We'll make the recording available on our website and YouTube channel shortly after the event. And we'd kindly ask the audience to keep their cameras and microphones off while our presenters are speaking. After the speakers conclude, we'll have a brief Q&A round. I'd ask that you please submit your questions in the chat after our final speaker, Oliver, concludes. And please list the organization that you're affiliated with as well, please. And with that, I'll hand the floor over to our first speaker, Terry Simmons, joining us from Atlanta, where I hope it's a bit warmer than here up north in DC. Terry is a partner and director of the International and Immigration Practice Group at Arnall Golden Gregory LLP in Atlanta. Terry is also a board member of the GACC South and works closely with German companies in the South region. She's also an adjunct professor at the University of Georgia Law School. Terry, the floor is yours, and let me turn your camera on.
Thank you very much, Kevin. You neglected to say go dogs after my introduction as an adjunct at the University of Georgia School of Law, but of course we're in the season now, so I will throw that out. Appreciate very much the opportunity to speak to everyone today about some issues and updates under the Biden administration and immigration. I know this is a critical issue for German business in the United States. And I have 5 to 10 minutes to give you some hot topic updates. So I will do my best to do that in that frame of time. I think the good news everybody knows is that the economy is booming, and certainly German business is booming in the United States. We've seen unprecedented expansions. I think particularly as business has recognized that it's very important to be engaged in the US market, to expand in the US market. The issue, talent. I think everybody I know in the Southeast, some of my clients, they have 20 job openings, 30, one of them has 2,000. And so everyone is really looking for skilled labor. So legal immigration to the United States has become much more important, I think certainly in the last year. And we're struggling to address the issues with legal immigration. And I'll tell you some of the issues that are coming to the attention of the administration right now and how we're handling them. We've got some good news, we've got some bad news. So starting with the good news, we appreciate very much that the travel bans have been lifted so that all of the companies are not struggling with applying for NIEs, national interest exceptions, so that their critical workforce can travel to the United States and work in the United States. However, we're seeing new travel bans be imposed on 8 countries in Africa. And so I think German business is also dealing with the effects of those new travel bans and applying for waivers of folks coming into the United States from South Africa in particular. We're seeing many issues. Along with that, we have new requirements, which of course we welcome, that folks traveling into the United States must be fully vaccinated. Some issues there, the concept of full vaccination in the United States is a little different than what it is in Germany. We're seeing folks who are fully vaccinated in the eyes of the German government, which are not necessarily recognized in the eyes of the US government. So we're wrestling through some of those issues. We're also asking questions about exemptions. Who can apply for exemption? How can we apply for an exemption? And those questions largely are remaining unanswered. Now to some of the good news. During this entire pandemic, I will tell you that all of the consulates around the world have struggled to keep everyone working and to process visas in a timely manner. I really have to applaud the US consulates in Germany for really keeping the business moving, keeping appointments available as much as they could. I know that folks have been frustrated over the last year. Sometimes it's taken quite some time to get an appointment for a particular type of visa application, but I will tell you that Germany has done an awesome job, the US consulates, in keeping business moving, much better than other consulates such as London or Amsterdam, Paris, or other major posts where it has been next to impossible for anyone to get a visa application appointment or to process any sort of visa applications in general. So know that they're really doing a good job, and I think they're doing everything they can to keep business moving. Some hot topic updates on the visa front. Some of you apply for what's called an H visa for professionals, authorizing them to work in the US, particularly our talented US students who remain in the United States and work for US business. It appears that the registration period for one of the few 65,000 lottery numbers will again be introduced in March, but we're waiting on instructions. On the L multinational visa front, there have been some developments this year. Some of the larger German companies with over 25 million in revenues in the United States apply directly for their L visas at US consulates outside the US. The standard for qualification for those blanket L visas filed directly at the consulate has been raised somewhat, but practically speaking, we're not seeing the adjudications look any different at the US consulates in Germany. So that's also good news. On the other hand, a lot of companies that don't have the $25 million in revenue and a blanket registration have to file petitions in the United States. Disaster. We have backlogs. We continue to see over half of filings in the United States be audited through the form of an issuance of what's called a request for information. My favorite this year is a company with 20,000 or 12,000 employees. The vice president was audited, wanting conclusive evidence that he, in fact, was an executive with that company. And so we're continuing to wrestle with filings with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in the United States, particularly with regard to long processing times, backlogs, and what we believe to be very extensive requests for information. E-visa processing. The US and Germany has a treaty in place where companies investing substantially, trading substantially with the US are able to apply for visas for their personnel directly at the US consulate in Germany. Again, shout out to Frankfurt. They process typically within 1 to 2 months. They have kept the process moving, and they have kept investors coming into the United States. So we appreciate that very much. That is not something that we have seen at most consulates around the world, I will tell you. On the other side, H&L visas, again, if your business employs people in H&L visa status, the government has ramped up the audit program again, where surprise audits are starting to take place again. We did not see any surprise audits during the pandemic, but we're starting to see them again. So make sure your compliance mechanisms are very much in order, because if you employ anybody in H or L visa status, you may be subject to a surprise audit. Now, really, really good news to finish off my update. And that is that many of us are wrestling, because we know that spouses of foreign nationals working in E or L visa status have been authorized to work, but only after they apply for an employment authorization document, which is approved and issued. Before March of last year, those applications were maybe taking 2 or 3 months. They were moving quite quickly. Suddenly, pandemic hit, furloughs, other issues at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and now some of those applications have been taking 12 months, 14 months, a long time. So a lot of the spouses have been losing their jobs. There was a lawsuit filed, supported heavily by the American Immigration Lawyers Association. There was a settlement in that lawsuit. Here's the really good news. Going forward, once policy is implemented, spouses of foreign nationals in E or L visa status will be able to work in the United States incident to status. They won't require that employment authorization document anymore. Customs Border Protection and the government are in the process of talking about how the I-94, the document showing status, shall be properly annotated, but they're supposed to report back by mid-March. We hope that we will see some movement in that area very soon. Right now, spouses who timely filed an application for extension of their employment authorization document, which they already have in hand, who have valid I-94s, are authorized to work. So that's tremendous for people in that category, and a very new update, which only came out middle of November with policy guidance that was just released. So in conclusion, what we are really advocating for in this area is that we are able to legally bring in the skilled workers that we need to expand our businesses, to run our businesses. We're asking for expanded interview waivers, remote visa processing, statewide processing of some visas as well, so that we can help the Department of State with their issues of trying to address the shortage of qualified workers and support our legal immigration system. Look forward to any questions. Thanks, Kevin.
Great. Thank you very much, Terry, for that extensive overview. We'll now move to the Midwest, where I'll hand it over to our next speaker, Bruno Chapoutot, Vice President of Sales at ElringKlinger North America, an automotive supplier based in Michigan. And let me get you online, Bruno.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can. I think the connection is great, Bruno. Let me get the slideshow back. Apologies for that.
No problem. So that was a very good insight, Terry. I have 3 cases around me in my team of people, spouses breathing again because they were about to lose their authorization to work between December and January. So this good news that you shared was actually implemented in our group, and that's a big relief. So I hope everybody can enjoy that possibilities. So while you put the background, okay, perfect. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'll be talking about ElringKlinger perspective of the last 1 year. ElringKlinger is an automotive supplier. We are based out of Dettingen, southeast of Stuttgart. We're about 1.7 billion euro company, 10,000 people, and we have more or less 45 locations in the world. In the Americas, we have 7 plants, 6 of which are serving the USMCA region, and we represent 345 million euro in 2021, which is a plus 12% from 2020 for those of you who've been hit like us in 2020. Our expected growth is quite high, plus 37% by 2026, expecting to reach 472 million euro in this region. We are an automotive supplier, and like a lot of automotive suppliers, we've been witnessing the shift in technologies. Luckily for us, we've been investing tremendously on the hybridification, hydrogen, and electrification of vehicles. If you're looking at the mega trends that are triggering those transformation, urbanization, scarcity of resources, globalization, you name it, one action that all OEMs are working on are the efficient propulsion, and this is where ElringKlinger is participating. Hydrogen electrification, we believe that there will be a coexistence between these 2 technologies in the future. Battery electric vehicles are excellent for commuting. The drawback is that there is a time to recharge. The infrastructure can be question mark, especially here in North America. And the fuel cell vehicle, on the other hand, can tackle the long haul expectations that commercial vehicles are going for. ElringKlinger has and is heavily investing in these 2 trends, as well as on the electric drive unit and the lightweight solution. What we believe the Biden administration is going to help us with in the medium and long term is with all the infrastructure work that is being prepared as we speak right now. Unfortunately, we have faced, like most of you, if not all of you, big challenges in 2021. The shipping costs from Europe and mainly from China have skyrocketed. 40-foot container used to cost $3,500. We've seen prices as high as $25,000. The port congestions on the West Coast, mainly from ships coming from Asia. Everybody is hearing 40 to 50 container ships are waiting on the port of LA or San Francisco, but everybody's forgetting about the additional 50 ships that are in the pipeline that the port are asking to reduce their speed. So in overall, the supply chain is expecting about 100 ships being blocked by the problem of transportation. And it's a cascade struggle, because once the boat is at the port, you need people to unload those boats, and you need trains and you need trucks, and it's a vicious circle. Then the other challenge that we faced were labor shortages. So many, we managed to bring a lot of people back when the reduction of the help from the government reduced. On the other hand, a lot of people have also realized that their life can be better. Taking care of their kids can become also an opportunity, and some of these people have not returned to work. We have been hit by the semiconductor crisis. On top of this, everybody at the beginning of COVID turned around and bought new computers, new PlayStations, new televisions, new everything. And it created a shortage in the automotive world, also where the semiconductor margins for the producers were lower than in the in the electronics world. And then last but not least, the manufacturing costs have gone up. Natural disasters have created struggles on the raw material. Plastics were affected, aluminum, steel, wood, magnesium now is the big thing. And definitely those are huge impact to our bottom line when it comes down to looking at the profit that we are generating. If I bring that back into the 2022 and how is President Biden being able to help with this? We all heard about investment on semiconductors. We all heard about localization of some battery production in North America. But these are the nice announcement. Where I see another big challenge for 2022 this time is that we don't see from the OEM localization of their supplies. There are still a lot of OEMs that are challenging us on costs and that are still expecting us to produce some of their parts abroad. In my opinion, it looks like we have not learned a lesson, and we've not understood that shortening the supply chain, reducing the inventory, preventing to be at the mercy of COVID, for example, in Asia Pacific, where all the semiconductors are produced, is a big threat to us. So 2022 is still going to bring us a lot of nice challenges. But if I want to finish on a positive note, ElringKlinger is opening a new facility in Texas. So that's going to bring us to 8 plants, 7 of which will serve the USMCA. And the plant in Texas is going to produce a part that will be used in a US electric vehicle manufacturer. Some of you may have seen that part or can see that part on the GACC website, because in October, we were awarded the German coolest things made in the USA with this component. It is a cross car beam that is mounted under your steering wheel. So happy that we are expanding. We will expand even more. 37% is what we expect to be at the growth that we will have by 2026. More employment, hopefully making the life of the people better, increasing wages, and looking forward to the challenges that are ahead of us. For sure, that's going to keep us all very busy. So thank you very much, and looking forward to your questions at the end.
Great. Thank you very much, Bruno, for that extensive overview, especially on the supply chain challenges. We all in Washington, D.C. here work on these issues on a more abstract level. I find it very helpful to get the on-the-ground perspective as to how a company is dealing with that. So next, we move on to perhaps the sweeter part of today's event with our speaker from HARIBO of America. And yes, that's where we all get our favorite gummy bears. We will have Lauren Trifler, Head of Corporate Communications at HARIBO of America, give us her perspectives. And Lauren, let me get you queued up. 1 second. Okay. Great, we see you, Lauren.
Thank you, Kevin.
Let me... Okay, all right, we are all set.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for having me here today. I'm so excited and proud to represent HARIBO of America. And I have a lot to echo what Terry and Bruno have said, but I also want to follow what Kevin alluded to, which is bring some fun today. So I want to update you on a lot of great things happening in the HARIBO business. And I know a lot of us on the phone know and love this brand. I think probably almost everyone. But Kevin, if you do have the slides up, I can start using those to supplement the conversation. But really our brand is about childlike happiness and bringing smiles to people. And what we've found over the past almost 2 years now is that we're providing that smile, that moment of inspiring happiness when people have needed it most. So over the past almost 2 years, we've been reminded that the confectionery industry is resilient. People are looking for sweet treats, moments of respite, and our brand was able to deliver on that. So while we are still healthy and growing, we've also faced challenges that the speakers have alluded to today, largely with global supply chain. So we faced those headwinds last year and we're continuing to do that now. And I'll talk with you a little bit about what we're doing to mitigate that as we move through the presentation. But a lot of what you see here is what we've been doing over the past 3 years on our brand growth journey, because HARIBO, as we know, is well loved in Europe and around the world. And here in the US, we're on a brand awareness journey. Increasingly so, people know what HARIBO does. We bring gummies to people around the US, around the world. And of course, around the world, we also produce licorice, marshmallow. Here in the US, we're focused on gummy. And so increasingly people know that, but we also want to tell them who we are, what our values are. So here you'll see a couple things that we were doing pre-pandemic. And last year, during that time that no one could have predicted, we had to pivot. And a lot of our associates, or all of them really, were working remotely to keep everyone healthy and safe. We put together business continuity teams, pandemic relief teams to make sure that people had what they needed to do their job successfully. So everything that you see here, we were still doing, just in a different way. So our brand, we do sampling tours in the US to make sure that people have a chance to try, get to know the brand. And we had to put that on hold, but we thought of other creative ways to make it happen. We partnered with retailers to ship samples along with customer orders since we couldn't get out in person as much. We still did media relations, which falls under my remit as head of communications. And we couldn't do live in studio anymore, but we did a lot of remote things. We still communicated with the media to tell our story and help them let the community know what we were about, what we were focused on. And community relations is a huge priority for us. It's part of our DNA. And as we move along here, you'll see our community partnerships on that next slide, Kevin. And a lot of these that you'll see are really focused in Wisconsin. Now, why is that? We are building our first ever North American manufacturing facility in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. That's in Kenosha County, which is right over the border of Illinois, which is where HARIBO's US headquarters is in Rosemont. So it's about 45 minutes away. And the reason that we are so enveloped in the community is because we want to be part of the neighborhoods. We want people to know who we are and what we're about versus just coming in and building a big factory that people have no connection to. So for us, it's hugely important to build community relationships with educational institutions. We see that as investing in today's students and tomorrow's workforce. We also partner very closely with the Boys and Girls Club of Kenosha and the Union League Boys and Girls Club in Chicago to really give back to the community. That's what we believe in. So when we were choosing our location to build this first ever North American factory, we looked at a number of places in Illinois, Wisconsin, around the US. And the reason we chose Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin is because of our mutual values and the work ethic of the region and the talent of the region, which I'll talk about in a little bit, sourcing that talent, the same thing as Terry alluded to. But we found that we had shared values and we felt at home here. So I would love to give everyone a quick overview of the progress that we're making on our factory since we're all so excited. So here's a brief video for you to see a drone footage, so you'll have an aerial view of our progress so far. And I know everyone's internet bandwidth is different, so hopefully you can bear with us and it will play. So just to give some context here, we broke ground on this factory October 2020, of course, during the midst of it all. And it was a very small groundbreaking ceremony, only with internal people. Obviously, all protocols were followed. We were outside, masks on, but we wanted to get our project started. It's been really a dream come true and a milestone for the HARIBO business. So what you see here is our production building and administrative building on your right, and that passerella walkway in between leads you to a warehouse. And across the way, to the opposite way of the highway that it's facing, we're having another warehouse in Bristol, which will help alleviate some of our logistic challenges right now with product coming in from the ports, shipped from warehouses on the East Coast or West Coast. We'll have a Midwest distribution center, which will help with efficiency and getting product to our customers quickly so we can serve them with excellence. So these are some of the things that will help us navigate our global supply chain challenges. Obviously, with our factory built, we'll no longer be 100% import, which we are today. We'll start producing Gold Bears first, our iconic fan favorite. So that will help producing here in the US to get product to customers faster. We will still import a percentage of products from around the world, but it will help us now in the US to start here. And we are supposed to be up and running, if all goes according to schedule, and we're on track now, to be open and producing in early 2023. So we're on track. So I talked about a lot of headwinds, and I'm happy to answer any further questions afterwards. But looking to 2022, we have a lot of exciting things to celebrate. In 2020, we were celebrating 100 years of the HARIBO business. And of course, a lot of those celebrations came to a halt. So in 2022, we have our take two, really, as we celebrate 100 years of Gold Bears, our fan favorite iconic product. So we have a lot of customer activations planned next year, consumer activations, and we're so excited to be able to have another chance to celebrate a product like this that people know and love, increasingly so. So Kevin, if people are comfortable giving addresses, we can absolutely arrange some samples for folks to make sure everybody has gummies, especially around the holiday season. So we'll have to talk about logistics of that. So I'm happy to answer any questions, like I said, but we're really excited, even in the midst of everything we've been facing. You know, we too have, of course, colleagues that fly in from Germany, and that came to a halt last year. And we went through the tariff proposal. We went through trying to mitigate the visa situation. So there were a lot of challenges, but also a lot of things that really reminded us how resilient not only the industry is, but our employees as well. We have 120 associates here in the US, and just 5 years ago, we had under 15. So we've had to hire resources and great talent rapidly to support our growth. And it's been really inspiring to see the business continue to grow. And now it's just looking ahead to how we support that growth, how we move forward strategically and serve our customers and consumers with excellence. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Lauren. Congratulations on the new facility. And yes, we will follow up on the logistics of sending the gummy bears to our participants. I think we would all love that. We're all big fans of HARIBO. So thank you very much. And next up, last but not least, we'll hear from Oliver Baumann, president of Baumann Consulting. This is a company that provides innovative energy solutions for buildings. They're headquartered in Washington, D.C., with offices in Chicago and elsewhere throughout the country. And Oliver, let me get you queued up. Great, there. Oliver is here. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. And thanks to RGIT for including me in today's session. I'll try to be as informative and concise as the previous speakers. So my name is Oliver Baumann. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And after working about 10 years in Germany as a mechanical engineer in the MEP in the building industry, I decided to move to Washington, D.C. That was in 2006 to start my own company, Baumann Consulting. On the logo here, you see this year was our 15th anniversary. Nothing compared to the 100 years of HARIBO, which I personally really look forward to as well. Yeah, our company, next slide, please, Kevin.
Oh, one second here.
So Baumann Consulting, we provide consulting services for energy efficiency and sustainability in buildings. And our mission is to elevate high performance buildings, how we refer to them, to become the standard of our industry. That is really what drives us every single day. And our goal is to reduce carbon emissions and all the negative impact that buildings have to our environment and the communities, and really turn buildings into a more positive aspect. Kevin, I guess you have issues with the presentation. I don't see the presentation. Okay.
Okay, I think, yeah, sorry.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So Baumann Consulting is headquartered in Washington, D.C. That's where I started the company. In 2013, I personally moved to Washington, D.C. We have an office there since 2012. In the same year, we expanded back to Germany, to Frankfurt. And these are the three offices that we have here. On that slide, you see just typical projects that we're working on. And one in Chicago, Ogden Commons, that's a development. It started with the small building on the right here. That's a outpatient surgery center. And then that was completed in 2020. And right now, the developer is building those residential buildings here that we are involved in. In Washington, D.C., for those of you who are in Washington, D.C., you might know the 2050 M Street, and a brand new development by Tishman Speyer. The CBS studio is in that building, and one sample project from Frankfurt. It's also a whole quarter that is being developed in the region of the Osthafen in the east of Frankfurt. That's also our office is right behind this Moxie Hotel that you see here. So these are typical commercial buildings that we're working on. Next slide, please. So the economy is really booming. We heard that before. And the construction industry is booming. Baumann Consulting in 2021 had a 30 to 40% increase in revenue, which is really tremendous and not so easy to swallow for a relatively small company like us. We are about 30 employees worldwide. So in those three offices that I mentioned before, what we offer is services over the entire life cycle of buildings. We start with feasibility studies, we develop concepts for new construction for existing buildings, we evaluate energy efficiency and sustainability for buildings, we verify performance of buildings, and we go in buildings and optimize the operation and their performance. And so we really see the entire life cycle of buildings. On the other side, what you see on the left side here, we cover a very wide range of industries, starting with airports, commercial buildings, but then data centers. That's actually something that really took off last year for us. We do government work a little bit. I'll get back to that in just a moment. Healthcare laboratories is booming, higher education. And then one thing that really took off for us over the last, I would say 18 to 24 months is warehouses and distribution centers. where we work on 1 million, 2 million, 3 million square foot facilities all over North America and also all over Europe. And through the pandemic in beginning of 2020, I had a little scare moment because overnight I saw about a third of our projects that we were actively working on going on hold because no one really knew what was happening when the pandemic started. And luckily, most of these buildings, most of these projects came back within 2 to 4 weeks. The developers, the investors just needed a moment to reconsider and double check if they're still doing the right things. And they, in most cases, they did. We saw a shift a little bit away from commercial buildings, away from hospitality, hotels, but we saw a major push in multifamily residential. And as I mentioned before, those warehouses, distribution centers, data centers, we have a real push here. One area is federal contracts. So we do work with the federal government and also local governments. We have master service agreements with the US Army Corps of Engineers, actually in Europe. We have master service agreements with the architect of the Capitol, with the GSA, and it's less than 5% of our overall work, but still relevant and important. And again, I'll get back in just a couple of moments why that is so important for us to be in that federal government business. Next slide, please. So this is a map of our North America reach. So you see those two offices, Washington, DC and Chicago. And one thing that really changed for us significantly in 2020 and continue doing that in 2021 is our presence. So you can imagine we work on new construction. We go on construction sites like what we saw just from the HARIBO video. That's where we are. That's where we spend typically most of our time. And over the last 18, 24 months, we were, as everyone else, very limited in how we traveled around. And so we had to come up with new ideas, new solutions, how we provide our services for buildings where we couldn't travel anymore. One little anecdote, we have a project with the US Army Corps of Engineers in Romania, and we were scheduled in 2020, I think it was October or November, for a 2-week on-site verification. So we did testing and took measurements in that facility. And that whole trip ended up being a 4-week adventure for one of my colleagues, because in order to get on that site and in order to get to Romania, which was logistically a huge challenge, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks in Romania before we actually could get on site. The federal government, sorry to be so blunt, but they made it clear to us that that is not within their responsibility. So we couldn't actually get a budget increase for that. So we had to swallow that. At the same time, they made it clear that if we don't fulfill our obligation from the contract and bring someone on site for those verifications, that we would have legal implications. So we made it happen. We went on site, everything went well. And that colleague has great stories to tell his grandchildren about his quarantine in Transylvania. Next slide, please. So we have a similar situation in Germany and Europe. We really have struggled going to sites, and we adopted our service offerings. And despite all that, our revenue, our project amount grew tremendously last year. And next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about energy efficiency and sustainability in the building industry, because most in the past, we haven't really looked here in North America or in the US to the federal government. There was not much initiative coming from here, and energy efficiency and sustainability programs are mostly driven by local regulations. New York City, for example, with the local law 87 that requires energy audits and energy efficiency upgrades for existing buildings. Washington, D.C., just over the last year, implemented a building energy performance standard, BEPS requirements that requires existing buildings to increase their energy efficiency significantly. And we see benchmarking requirements everywhere in the country, but this is mostly municipal and local regulations. And the other driver is really the investment market. In the European Union, we have the taxonomy regulations for sustainable activities, and that is a big push that we see in our industry, because investors and developers suddenly see the point of investing in sustainability because they can claim tax reductions. And what is most exciting for me is really the executive order on catalyzing clean energy industries and jobs through federal sustainability that President Biden just signed last week. And so this executive order has very clear goals, and I just list a few of them here. One of them is achieve a carbon pollution-free electricity sector by 2035 and a net zero emissions economy. And no later than 2050, 100% pollution-free electricity on a net annual basis by 2030. That's 8 years from now. 100% zero emission vehicle acquisitions by 2035, including 100% zero emission light duty vehicle acquisitions by 2027. I assume Bruno is very happy about that part of the executive order. And then net zero emissions buildings portfolio by 2045 and 50% emissions reductions of existing buildings by 2032. Again, this is a next 10-year horizon. And there are more of these requirements, and I'm really looking forward to the push that we will see here. Again, this executive order only covers the federal government and federal buildings and the operation of the federal government. But as the biggest landowner, the biggest building owner in the United States, this will have a significant impact and will further drive our industry. So now the point that Terry already made and others, our biggest struggle is finding talent. We do simply not have enough people to get the work done that we have on our desk. And in 2021, we hired 50 new employees. That's a net increase of our staff of 25, almost 30%. That's tremendous. That's our biggest increase that we ever had. And we would probably have hired a few more if we could have found the people. And what we realized is that we need to be a little bit more flexible with the expected expertise level, the skills level, and we just invest significantly more time and money into internal training opportunities. And I see the same thing happening now in 2022 and the next years to come. And that's my conclusion here. I look forward to the questions and sessions.
Great. Thank you very much, Oliver, for that overview. Let's open it up to questions now. So if the audience has any questions, please write those in the chat and you can address them to any speaker in particular or all speakers. Please feel free. Well, okay, it looks like, well,
Hey.
Christoph.
I take advantage asking a question and actually following Oliver's presentation. So we get a lot of requests from companies, or not requests, but there's a big question: how do they follow the money? So there's so much money floating around right now, and which is great. Of course, there are so many stimulus packages, and I just read the other day that the first one, the American Rescue Package, that they are working on this now, that they are withdrawing money from this in order to implement projects. Do you have any practical advice how to follow the money? There's so much money around in energy efficiency, renewable energy. Any hands-on advice?
I can give maybe a little bit of advice, because we were in a situation a few years ago when we had previous stimulus packages. We were left out because we have not had our right contract vehicles in place. We haven't had the right connections. And I mentioned earlier, so we have now master service agreements with the federal government. So for all these agencies, it's really important that they can very easily reach out to companies that they're pre-qualified, they have established contract vehicles. If you're now at the point where you want to establish that relationship, I would say it's too late. This is simply from my experience from the past. Nevertheless, there are so many companies out there, bigger firms or like us, that have contract vehicles, and they might not be able to fulfill all the requested work that's coming their way. And I think the most promising way is probably to find a prime contractor and subcontract your work, your services to them.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And we do have a few questions that were asked earlier in the chat. So let's go to, we have a question from Katharina Kort from the Handelsblatt. Maybe getting into the labor shortage issue a little more deeply. Oliver just alluded to it. How do you, if anyone has a maybe a good anecdote or a way that they've worked to address it, I'll give that to all the panelists, and whoever wants to jump in can do so. Thank you.
I can go with this one. In the, I mean, the automotive industry is a very old industry. We are not used to a home office. We're not used to remote access. We're not used to all these new things. And what we see is that I have some of my colleagues from other companies that were forced to return to work in person. And these people, their people have left the company. So one comment or one conclusion we have for us in our group over here is that we are trying to accommodate as much as possible this new way of working, and making it a split work between office and home, because as I alluded during my conversation earlier, people have gotten into new habits in taking care of their kids, and the way they do things is different at home now, and they don't want to return to in-person in the offices. I have opened my office to everybody who is vaccinated, and out of 50 people, I have 2 or 3 that are coming to work on a regular basis. So people are comfortable at home. So don't force them to come back to the office. That would be one hint, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. And we have another question from Bretta O'Brien, asking about the biggest market access barrier for your companies currently in terms of the US market. Maybe Bruno, now that we're on you, if you just want to speak quickly to that, and then we can have other panelists tune in as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, one of the biggest barrier that we see in the US is competence, skilled workers. So the automotive industry is moving away from stamping, for us, stamping parts, where we did not need necessarily very educated people. but just people with a smart attitude, etc. Now we're talking about electrification, we're talking about fuel cell, we're talking about components that have geometrical tolerances that are extremely tight. They need to manage the very high voltages, high amperages. So you're talking about people that needs to go through very specific training. So this is the big challenge we see when we're opening this new plant in Texas. What we're seeing as well is contract manufacturing, industrialization, engineering. All these people are missing, shortage, clearly.
Great, thank you very much. And if our other panelists want to chime in on that question, or I'd also like to give the opportunity for you all to offer any final thoughts looking into 2022. So to our panelists, the floor is yours. Chime in as you please. Thank you.
Well, I'll just jump in and say I really appreciated those comments that Bruno was sharing about labor shortages and trying to work with the workforce. We're a very different community in the United States. And what Lauren was saying earlier about community involvement, that's something that I've found throughout the years being born and raised in America, that I have to really share with a lot of the folks I work with, how critical that is to an American business, reaching out to schools, reaching out to the community, investing in the community, things that are done on a basis that doesn't really come from the federal or the state government. It comes from the company itself, and it inspires the workforce and inspires people to want to apply to work. We've also been working this year very much together with our clients to develop new employment policies. And that's been a big focus of our work, because the employment culture before the pandemic is very different now, and we've had to work and see what the needs of the business are, but then develop more flexible employment policies, because without getting together with your advisors and doing that, you will lose employees. I think one of the biggest challenges, though, as everyone has said, is we really do need the apprenticeship programs, which the chambers have worked so hard to implement throughout the United States. We need them more in the United States. We need more skilled workers. It's very hard, though, to build those with our employment system, which by and large is the right to work system in most of the states, with free investment in programs, but investing in people who can then leave the company very readily. And so that's something as an American communities we really need to invest in and work in. And of course, making our business immigration system more flexible so that we can bring the people in that we need from South America, from Europe, from other places that may be underutilized in companies, perhaps in South America or other places, but who are critical to expanding our business and our markets in the United States.
Great. Thank you very much, Terry, for those concluding remarks. And I think on that note, we're at the end of the hour now. So respectful of everyone's time, it's time to conclude. I'd like to really thank our panelists for their time and their perspectives today. One theme that I drew out of this was resiliency, working through challenges, staying solutions oriented. And I think the future looks bright for 2022, the challenges notwithstanding. But I'm confident we'll all move forward in a productive way. So thank you again to our panelists, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.